Welcome to Shop Culture. This is episode. We have a theme this episode. I think we're gonna have themes from now on. This one is timing. We're gonna.
Well, it's bad timing because if it was good timing, I'd be home cooking.
Yeah, you'd be
tuna
eating.
and eating some risotto. But
It
right
is
now,
late, and
sitting here talking to you guys.
And I'm
it's after
forcing
5, and I should be vominos from here.
That is how lucky you all are, and how much Nathan appreciates your viewing pleasure.
Are they sending me free fish?
Who knows? Send free fish to the shop. He likes fish. All right. So as far as timing goes, we're going to show you in a little bit how to set the timing on a bike with points and condenser. But for now, timing. So good timing, bad timing, comedic timing. Do you have any stories about timing?
Well, good timing for the shop was probably hiring Biscuit to do oilhead stuff. Because none of the dealers want to fool with it. And that in turn brought us some other motorcycles that we used to not talk about,
right?
The Triumphs, and we're
Harley
working on
Davidson's
2 Triumphs, the Harley,
right?
that Panett's finishing up, and some other stuff.
What's your favorite time in the shop?
My favorite time in the shop?
Yeah, like what do you enjoy most doing?
Probably when Mac brings me some brownies from the bakery. That's probably one of my favorite
This
times.
man loves chocolate. He wants chocolate. Send him chocolate.
It's the only reason I go to the gym 3 days a week is so I can eat chocolate ice cream. I mean, I thought everybody did that.
Yeah.
My favorite time in the shop is when you don't bother me and I'm working.
Yep.
And I can concentrate on one thing at a time, which rarely happens.
Yep. It's happened more since I came, right?
Not really. Yes and no, but I mean the stuff I've been doing. Yesterday I spent time with Biscuit, doing a little bit of welding stuff, and day before a transmission I did was a 1-year gearbox, and I had to make a little special tool for a special tool I already had. So spending time on the lathe, doing welding and fabricating, and having people pay you for it. That's about as good as it gets. I mean, I like all the stuff I do.
You like making tools a lot, right?
Well, I like thinking outside the box. I like looking at stuff and
Right.
trying to figure out how to make it work. Just today, taking that Triumph apart, the primary side of the Triumph, and it had some issues, and we had to make a tool, and I had to look at this, that, and the other. So Murray got over there too, and we all kind of got together and figured out what we wanted to do, and then we did it. So that's kind of outside the box.
Yeah.
That's something
working
on something I don't know anything about.
Interesting puzzles
is always fun.
Right. What do you think? What do you think the best era of the shop was?
The best era?
Yeah, like.
Probably when I worked by myself in my garage 20 some odd years ago on the other side of town, and out of my house. My cats could come hang out with me and hand me tools. And,
Your cats handed you tools?
Oh yeah. The cats took care of me. They still take care of me. But that was, when I came back from Charleston, I decided I didn't want to get back into the construction industry, which I ended up doing anyway. I wanted to just work on motorcycles, so I set up a little shop in my 2-car garage, and I set up a shop there and worked there for a while before I bought some property down the road, burnt down house, built a house, and built a shop at the same time. But way back when things were a lot looser,
right?
And I didn't have 5 or 6 employees, so having employees, you end up getting involved in their lives. They spend as much time with you as they do with people at their house. So those were probably simpler times.
The times that I hear you talk most about is when you had, I believe, a crew of Type A personalities that all worked together really well.
Murray's been with me going on 12 years now.
Yep. Murray's great.
And Dean worked with us for a really long time, and those are 2 of the smartest people I've ever met.
Yeah.
And all of us are Type A personalities, and so I don't think it's difficult to deal with Type A personalities if you understand that they know more than you do, but that there's always situations.
Sometimes
there's always situations where something happens. One day, Dean was working on a motorcycle, and he was really frustrated because he couldn't get the neutral light to come on, and I walked over to him and looked at it, and it was in first gear, and I clicked it up, and the neutral light comes on, and he just kind of looked at me and shook his head. And other times he'd come up to me, and I'd be trying to figure out something electrical, and he'd go, he goes, you ought to know this shit by now. And then he just walked back to what he was doing. So, working with people who are smarter than you you learn a lot. Not that you don't, even working with people who you're trying to give information to, because you have to figure out enough about it to explain it to them so they understand it. And that's not always easy to do. You know how to do it, but you can't necessarily tell them why you do this at this point rather than do this at this point. So,
And I think that's true for every field. You always want to be working with people smarter than you. I know it's kind of counterintuitive because people are really jealous and they want to guard their cheese. But in the end, like when you are working with somebody smarter than you or knows more than you do in an area, and you know more in a different area, you guys are just feeding off of each other and learning from each other. And you, as you said, like 3-4 type A personalities were in the shop.
3, but the whole thing boils down to the fact that they have to be people who don't wear their egos on their sleeves.
Right. Yeah, egos.
And that's the key, is that there's lots of people who are smarter than you, but you'll never learn anything from them because they're not interested in teaching anything. And then there's the people who are smarter than you that you get along with because they also know that you've got certain things that they can't do or don't do as well as you do, and vice versa. So there's a little kind of symbiotic situation, and we had that going here for probably 10 years. So
I think that's one of the things about Boxer Works shop culture is the lack of egos that are at the shop. Like nobody is like worried about walking around asking a question, trying to get help. Murray's still here. He's brilliant in everything, and he'll come and you'll hey Murray, come here. I need your help with this. I need you to help me figure this out. And come over and he'll ask you.
Well,
back and forth. He did that like twice today. I think, back and forth.
How many people can tell you how much a piece of metal expands at 0 degree? I mean, he's a Georgia Tech mechanical engineer, so a lot of times we'll say, hey, we'll read something, and he'll go, I'm calling bullshit on that. And out comes the piece of paper, and he starts writing stuff down and making pictures and arrows and formulas. And, and what's kind of interesting is we did a bunch of, World Traveler bikes. And a lot of those bikes, we did different suspension on them. And we always had to figure out how much travel we had and how long we wanted the custom-made shock and so on and so forth. And so I know how to do it the long way. I know how to do it kind of by looking at it and doing this, that, and the other.
Sure.
And Murray knows how to do it by formula. And so I would do it my way, and Murray would come back in the morning, and he'd go, all right, here's what I got. Here's the length I have. And then I say, all right, here's what I got. And, we'd be within, 3 or 4 millimeters of each other.
And it's just a different way of doing the same thing.
And then, we've had discussions, that's in compression. No, that's in this, that's in, and so, So having Murray around is, answers a lot of questions for us. But that goes back and forth. I mean, Murray comes over and, we discuss things that he's doing. And working with Biscuit is good, too. Biscuit's smart guy. He's all over the place. I mean, you gotta.
Yeah, but he knows everything.
He's real smart, and he's able to, because of that, he's able to figure a lot of stuff out. But we still I don't have any problem. He and I work together real well because we both just kind of think about what's going on and we look at it as, just like yesterday, some stuff. Well, what about this? I said, wait a minute. If we do this and we do this, this ought to work. Oh, well, let's try it. Oh, it works.
Yeah.
Just because 2 eyes always better than one.
Yeah.
And when you have several people looking at the same issue, you're going to get a lot of different answers. And between all that, you're probably going to come closer to figuring out a good solution to it. Right. So.
Yeah, I managed teams for 10 to 15 years in the games industry. And one of the things I learned is you can have a rock star that's really, really good at stuff. But if he's an and nobody wants to work with him and he's got a huge ego, he just brings everybody down. And everybody else does worse work because this guy is bringing them down and creating a really toxic environment for everyone else to work in. And, we don't have that here. We have a lot of really smart people who are very open about teaching, learning, helping, working together, so on and so forth. And personally, it's really an awesome place to be at.
Murray's son worked with us for a little while. And after the first week, on his paycheck, he said, what's really interesting about here? I said, what's that? He says, everybody says thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I never really thought about it, but everybody says thank you.
Yep. Or please or whatever. Yeah. We really respect each other.
I hadn't really thought about that because it's just always the way it's been. And,
yeah.
But Todd pointed that out to me.
So timing, points and condensers. So it's very specific years that bikes had points.
Well,
and condensers,
bikes had points if you want to call it the modern era, from 1950 to 1980.
Yeah.
1950 to 1969 were points on a magneto. 1970 to 1979 were plain points condenser. 1980 were points in a can because they were getting ready to change to a hall sensor. So they changed the front timing cover and they made a timing cover. They made a can that looked like it would be the hall sensor with the laser in it, but it had points in it. And then for 1981, they did away with all that stuff.
So what we're about to show, what years is that?
Well, it's applicable to anything with points and condenser. We're going to show it to you on a 70 through 79 bike. Something that's got it right in the front, no magneto. Something that has to work off a battery. That's got the separate coils and has to have 12 volts to work on it. The magneto is a self-generating spark machine. You don't need a battery. You don't need anything. It makes its own spark. The point setup is the same, but the timing is a little different in how to do it.
Right.
So, and we want to talk about the fact that you're setting the gap, which is also called setting the dwell.
Okay.
And they call it the dwell because it's how long the points dwell in the closed position. The gap in the points, if you set the gap in the points at what the factory says, 16 thousandths with the feeler gauge that comes in your kit, then you set your timing. As the rubbing block on the points, you put grease on a little phenolic block. There's a little brown block on the points, and that rubs against the cam, and eventually that wears. And as it wears, the points get smaller and smaller. The gap gets smaller and smaller. And as the gap gets smaller, it dwells for a different time.
Right.
And when it dwells for a different time, then the timing changes.
So you have to adjust it as the points
right. Well, you adjust it, and then later on, you go to shoot it, and it changes. Now, if you have a electronic ignition, there's nothing that rubs. It's a pickup and a little laser. So theoretically, it always.
And one of the things
we
do here pretty often is convert points and condenser
over
to.
We use the Dyna a lot just because it's inexpensive, but we've got other systems we use too, and that also takes your hands away from having to get in there and do it. Also, when you're setting points, anytime you get any kind of grease or anything on the point, so if you have a feeler gauge and you don't clean it with some contact cement, and you stick it in there and you've got some debris or just dirt in general, you get it on the points, that helps the points burn up quicker. So you want the points to stay clean. Right. You want your feeler gauge to be clean. So those things were all eliminated with electronic ignition.
Yep.
Whether you use no matter what system you use, there's lots of different systems. But that and it's also difficult to get inside the timing cover with the front end in the way and get the points in there, or get the feeler gauge in the points. For a lot of people, it's too hard for them to do. And who knows what the feel is when it's right? That's something that I've had a hard time. That's right.
I've had a hard time getting that right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that
really
all gets eliminated.
Subtle.
That all gets eliminated when you use electronic ignition, because there's nothing touching anything else. It's all done without any rubbing involved.
All right, well, we can get to that. Let's get to it.
Okay, so we want to talk a little bit today about the points and condenser and the ignition system on your bike. Here we have an easy way to see it. Most of the stuff's out of the way. This is the advance unit. The points are back here. This is the condenser. You always change the condenser when you change a set of points. Basically what happens is if you've ever taken a wire that had power on it and you've scraped it on something like ground, you'll see it has an arc. Well, the points would arc each time they opened if we didn't have the condenser to hold the charge to keep it from traveling from the plus side to the minus side. Each time that happens, it deposits metal from the plus side onto the minus side. So it makes a hole in one side and a mountain in the other, and eventually your gap gets smaller and smaller because that tit sticks out farther and farther. So we do the same, we do the two of them at the same time.
So condenser, when the condenser goes bad, what's happened?
Well, the points start to show that you get a mound in here. You get if it goes bad completely, the bike will stop running.
Right. So what does the condenser do exactly?
It holds a charge.
Oh, it holds
so that
charge.
Each time these points open, there's not an arc that goes and moves the metal from one side to the other. If you look at a set of old points, as the condenser starts to lose its value, the points will start to have a tit on one side and a hole on the other, and the dwell changes. When the dwell changes, the timing changes, and the bike's hard to start and hard to ride.
Do you know what's inside of here that goes bad?
I don't know. It's what's
Just
inside there. I
a
have no
tube
idea.
of magic that holds
Right.
electricity.
It's a bunch of little mice. They're in that deal.
Perfect.
So if
Tiny mice in every
So
single
if we
motorcycle.
want to start this, the first thing we need to do is take the spark plugs out, so we can easily rotate the points over.
Yep.
And so what we would do, well, in order to set the points, the cam that sticks out of here has a point on it, has a high point. And so this cam needs to be turned so that the high point is on the points, and the points get set at the 16 thousandths. It's the high point. The cam needs to be, the cam opens, and then when the rubbing block on the points falls off, then the points close. So we want to set the points at the highest spot, so they'll be open when we want them. They'll be at the space we want them.
Does it spark when it's open or closed?
It's not supposed to spark at all. I mean,
Oh, okay.
That's what the condensers do. But
Right.
so what happens is,
See, I don't know.
when you're setting the gap, you're setting the dwell. And the dwell basically is defined as the amount of time the points dwell closed. They stay closed. So what happens is, power goes through this, the points are open. When they close, and it collapses the field of electricity in the coil, and then the coil spits out a spark, and the spark goes to your spark plugs. So we want all this to happen at the right time. So the first thing we have to do is set the gap, or the dwell, because the size of the gap determines how long it stays closed. So we set the dwell basically at the 16 thousandths. You can use this feeler gauge that's in your toolkit. And with this set at the high point, and we can show you where the high point is if you want to watch. You can see right now the points are open, and that's why we take the spark plugs out. So it's easy to turn this over, and we're watching the points. They're closed, they're closed, they're closed. Now they're just beginning to open, and we rotate this until we can see that they're about as wide as they're going to be, and that's usually about 9:45 or 10 o'clock on these bikes. And so then we're going to take our feeler gauge. This is the part that's a pain in the ass for most people and not easy to do. You want to slide this through the points, and you want to have a certain feel. You want a certain amount of stiction. You don't want this to open the points by putting it in, because then it's too tight. You don't want it to flop around in there, then it's too loose. So this screw right here, if you loosen this screw so that you can tap or push on the points, the little groove right here, you can push it this way to make them bigger. You can take a hammer and tap gently to make them smaller. And so you move this set of points. You move the points are slotted. You stick this feeler gauge in. When you get it where you want it, you snug this back up again, and then you check to make sure that nothing's changed. Because sometimes if the backing plate is not flat, which most of them aren't, as you tighten it and it pulls on the back, it changes this. So you need to check it after you tighten it and make sure that it stayed where it is, and you want it to be fairly snug. So the next thing we're going to do is the points are attached to the backing plate. The backing plate is this plate behind it that this is screwed to. The backing plate has two screws. It has this one here, which you want to loosen up, not super loose, just enough that you'll be able to tap on these little tits here to move it, and then there's another one at the bottom. And so when you set the timing, you will be tapping in one direction or another with the timing light in the front here. You want that S in the middle So you take a screwdriver, you tap one way, and you watch what happens, and you tap the other way, and you watch what happens until you get the S in the middle. You tighten these two screws down again. You have to check the timing again because the plate may not be flat.
And if you can't find the S mark, it's a good thing to set the backing plate kind of to the middle, and then you know which way you need to go to bring the S in to the frame. So starting in the middle and then tabbing a little bit. If you don't find it, tab it the other way, get back to the middle, and then go the other way.
In most cases, if this is a bike that you rode in, it's going to be pretty close. You set the dwell, last time you had the points apart, the cover off, you set the dwell. So in most cases, if you set the dwell back to where it was the last time you did this, you're going to be pretty close. You may have to tweak it kind of one way or another. Here's the advanced unit, and we have to take the points and condenser off in order to put new points and condenser in. We have this on the high point. We've rotated this over, so this is at the high point. You can do it now or you can do it after. Sometimes when you break this, it might move it a little bit. You might want to, when you put the points on, you may have to bring it back up to the high point again. But you're going to pull the advanced unit off. and then you're going to unscrew this screw. You're going to take the points off, and then you're going to loosen this. There'll be another wire here that runs to the coil, so you pull this wire off. Then you'll pull this back through here. Sometimes it makes more sense to take this off altogether and have this whole thing in your hand. But we unscrew this, we take the points out, we unscrew this, the bottom where it's going over the wire, we push it out of the way, we pull the wire back out of here, and now we have the points in our hand and the condenser in our hand. We get our new points, take this off. And you may also notice when you do this that the screws are different length. This screw here, which has to go through here and here, is going to be longer. It's the same thread pitch, the same diameter, but it's going to be longer than these screws. These screws aren't too long, otherwise they'll be running into the case. So the screws are different lengths. So when you take this apart, if you're putting this on
you just drop
a rag or something, yeah, I'm dropping it so that you have something to do.
Yes.
Right, and then you push this, you loosen this, you push this out of the way,
yep,
so you can get this out of here. Now this is glued in. Hold on, this is glued in. So most of the time these come loose and you have to clean all the glue off and recontact cement it in so it stays in place. So if it's already in place, then you can pull this out carefully, or you can just cut this, or you can cut this and just pull this out and pull this out and you're done. Then when you go to put the new one in, sometimes you can work it up. Sometimes I take a piece of safety wire or a piece of wire and I run it through here, loop it around the end, and pull this back through. It's kind of a pain in the neck.
Let's see if I can get
well,
it out.
Yeah, because you're stuck up here. That's
yeah.
why I say just cut the end off.
Yeah, yep, I got it. Let's pull it out.
Okay, so also this insulation right here needs to be sticking out, needs to be against the points, because this is the part that's exposed to the heat. This part here doesn't have as much heat. So you don't want this up here. You want this down here when you put all this together so that this insulation does the job it's supposed to do.
So you got the safety wire. You can run the safety wire through this tube. Hook it.
You make a little bit of a hook.
Yep.
You stick the hook in here.
Onto the
slide it in there,
yep,
and then carefully work it your way back up till you pull it through. You want to see how your luck is?
Yeah, let's see. Let's see if I can actually do it.
You got to get it started past that point
yep.
first.
Oh, okay.
And keep some tension on
yep,
that.
Yep.
There you go.
And there you go.
Look at that, he got it done.
Teamwork.
Right.
We did it together.
Right.
With friendship.
So with new points, these are the new points. We're going to stick the new points back in here. There's a little tit on the points, fits in the hole. We put the hole in, we put the screw back in. This little cover right here that holds this in place, it's got a 45-degree cut on the side. It's supposed to give you the room when you put this in to be able to rotate this around. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. You got to boogie with this to get this in the hole so that it sits nicely in the hole, and then this you have to kind of fool and get out of the way. It's part of the boogie with doing this points, which is why in a lot of cases we just go ahead and put an electronic ignition, an inexpensive dyno or something like that on there. So you get that in there, you put the screw in here, but all that's back in here. You take the advance unit, you make sure the springs are in decent condition. You take a little bit of something like a Marvel mystery oil or a little oil and you put a little dot of it on either side here to give that lube, and then if you have air, spray it off. And then you take some point lube, which you can buy, and you put a little bit of point lube on here. That lube lubes this little phenolic block so it doesn't wear. If that wears, then it starts to close up the points, and again the dwell change. Put this in place, and then you slide this back in, taking notice that there's a flat here and there's a flat on the cam. So when you put it in place, you rotate it around until it seats. You find the spot there, it's seated. Then you put the nut back on.
But knowing when it's time to replace the points, that's when you look for the pitting, right?
Yeah, but you're probably replacing them anyway because it's been a while. One thing you definitely do not ever want to do, you want to turn the motor over. Normally this has an Allen on it because it's got the charging system on there. We took this off, so we just put a 13 on here. But if you want to rotate the motor, you never rotate it using this 10 millimeter, because if you break the end of this cam off, you're screwed. So you use this, you use the Allen wrench, you put it in, you rotate it over with spark plugs out, you rotate the motor over with that. You don't rotate the motor over with this, or you'll be in big trouble.
That's one thing I didn't do wrong.
Well, I'm glad.
I didn't break that. I've broken a lot of things. I didn't break that one.
Okay, so now that we showed you how to set the gap or the dwell, we're going to show you how to set the timing. So the first thing is we're going to take a timing light. We're going to hook it up to the battery. We're going to put the negative on last, is positive on first.
Negative on last,
Positive
you
on
always
first.
do that, right?
Always.
Always.
Yeah. And then we're going to put the little induction pickup on the spark plug wire. Usually has a direction, says towards the plug. We're going to put that on there.
So
Now here, yeah, there you go.
And you can do this on either side, right?
Yeah, but this is the side you want to check it on.
Okay.
One of the interesting things about this, for somebody who's in a house and can't start the bike, whether it's because your carburetors aren't working right, or you don't want to fume up your house, or you don't want to get it running because it's the middle of the night, you don't want to wake your family up. If you don't put any gas on this thing, you can crank this over and still check the timing, because it's still going to fire, so it doesn't have to run. You can crank this over, turn it over, and check it, and if it's not in the middle, then you can move the backing plate, which we showed you before, until you get that in the middle and check it, and then you'll want to check it after it's running, but you can get the timing pretty well set without starting the bike. So that's a nice thing to do. I learned that from doing it in the middle of my living room. When I lived in an apartment, I couldn't start the bike in the middle of the night.
We did that on this bike when we were first doing it.
Right,
Too.
so we're going to start the bike now.
All right.
And the other thing is that you want the bike to idle as low as possible. The advanced unit has weights on it, and we don't want the weights to start coming out and changing our position here. So we want this to idle as low as possible, and then we'll check to make sure our S is in the middle. Usually there's a line on either side of the S mark. As long as you're in between those, then you're doing all right.
And you don't want it to move. You want the S to always be in the same spot, right?
Yeah, but it can be in the middle of those two. Right. Somewhere in the middle of those two spaces.
So this is Nathan's bike. How long have you had this bike?
Since 1975.
And what year is it?
The chassis is a 62 to 69, and the motor that was in it was a 1970 R75. Another R75 motor's going back in it. The bike is in this condition at the moment because in 1977 I center punched a car. That's why I have this scar here. I broke the socket off the end of my elbow. And so I took it up to a place that has a laser set up, and they heated it where you can see it's red, and they straightened it back out.
So what are you doing to it next?
Well, I've got another motor off a bike that only had 1,500 miles on it. That was a restoration that got totaled. Bought the bike last year. It had a 4-speed transmission, and I'm building a 5-speed with probably a taller 5th gear. And we're going back through the rear drive and rebuilding the rear drive on the bike. This bike has a dual disc front end on it. This was the very first one I did on an Earl's, and this is a snowflake wheel, an 18-inch off an R65. I have just built a wheel, a spoke wheel to put on here on a tubeless rim, and we had it wrapped, so it's now a tubeless spoke wheel, and it's going on in place of this because I really don't like the way that looked, but that's what I had at the time when I built it.
What's Boot Hill Saloon?
It's a saloon by the graveyard in Daytona. That's why it's got that sticker on there.
Did you have a lot of fun there?
That's where it was.
Was it good?
I have a lot of fun every place I go.
And you've been a lot of places on this bike.
I've been all over on this bike. This bike has a Moto Guzzi rear fender, Harley Sportster tail light. The seat's off a Harley Panhead's police seat. The fender stock. The rest of the bike looks like it's got a /5 headlight shell.
You have metal bags.
The bags I had on here were the Enduro bags. I had at one point made some plywood boxes. I had a pet owl, and I had to feed it.
Wait, you had a pet owl?
Yeah, I had to feed it, and so I would always take stuff that I found on the side of the road, and I would throw it in there. Yeah. Well, what happened was
you had a pet owl on a motorcycle.
A friend of ours.
You took it with you on a motorcycle?
No, it drove actually. I sat on the back.
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
A friend of mine who was working about 50 miles from here, she came home to the house one day. 4 of us had a house together we bought, and she said, these people have an owl they found was caught in a fox trap, and one of its talons is damaged. And she showed me a picture of these people pushing the owl down the street in Elberton, Georgia, in a baby carriage. And I said, bring that owl back to the house. So she brought the owl home.
Right.
And we took it to a guy at the University of Georgia, and they nursed it back. It was a great horned owl.
Yeah.
Female. They nursed it back. They had to take its claw off. But we had it over the winter, and then after it was nursed enough, we took it back home. We had it in our house.
They let you have it back? They don't let you have
they let us have
it
it back
anymore.
Well, it's not wild animals. It's birds of prey are against the law to have, or feathers or anything.
Yeah.
So we had 5 cats at the time, and owls have this tendency that they do this clucking noise, and they get up real high. They go into what's called threat pose.
Right.
And so it got to be where the cats would do this, and so we built a pen for the owl. We had the owl out back, and then we would either get some carrion, fresh stuff that was run over, or we'd go to the chicken plant, and they had some chickens that had 3 legs and stuff that was not in good shape, and we'd bring it home and we'd feed it to the owl.
From pet owls to 3-legged chickens.
And,
That's where
we had it, and we had it until the springtime.
Yep.
We called it Owl Arena.
Owl Arena.
Owl Arena.
Owl Arena, like
Yeah.
ballerina.
But Owl Arena,
owl.
and then we let it
Brilliant.
go, and it flew off, and
Brilliant.
hopefully it had a
Great
good
rest
life.
of its life.
So that's why I had plywood, exterior CDX plywood bags
For dead
in here.
things.
Yeah, just for throwing stuff in.
What's the name of the bike?
Doesn't really have a name. People call it the Gray Ghost because it's this gray color. It's got a big 11-gallon Heinrich tank on it.
Yep.
And
Garrett
it's got
told me it was
the bike
beast.
itself, since I had it, had 285,000 miles on it.
Yeah. Garrett said one of our mechanics called it the Beast.
That's because of the
I like
tank. Because of the tank.
like the
Yeah.
beast.
I didn't build the bike. I bought it from a friend of mine, Claude. Claude and I worked in the oil field together for a couple of years, and he came down with a bike, and I eventually bought it from him. He had some other bikes, and then I've since done a lot to it since I bought it in '75.
You gonna let me ride it when you get it done?
You can ride it right now. I'll put some pedals on it, the
I'll
chain.
just
and
go. I'll
you
just
can-
go.
Yeah, you can ride it if you want. You know.
So we're gonna follow this bike as he puts it back together. We might do some instructional videos on it, might not. But you'll see in progress as this gets going. It may take a while. Shoemaker shoes and all that never gets done. But we're gonna follow it with you. Yeah. And what do they say at the end of every YouTube video ever?
I don't watch YouTube videos. I don't know. What do they say? I don't know. Sayonara? I mean,
Sayonara, and like and subscribe. Mash that button. Like and subscribe. Mash that button.